last year, I was with my mom talking about my younger brother, Scott, and she shared with me a story that I'll never forget. When he was around 11, she bought him a nice new pair of jeans for school. She figured that was a good investment since he was finally outgrowing that stage little boys go through where they come home looking like they've been rolling in a landfill. So the first day that he wore the jeans, he came home with the fronts covered in grass stains. And she was so frustrated. He walked through the door and she's like, really? So when she asked him why his brand new expensive jeans were covered in grass stains, he just looked at her and said, Mom, if I don't come home in grass stains, it means it wasn't a good day. Yeah, he was onto something, right? Going after joy with all you've got, with full force, and making it happen every single day. It's one of the true elements of creating lasting happiness. So going after those grass stains is essentially what I want to share about today. I believe there's mass confusion going on as to what happiness actually is. And rethinking it and getting crystal clear about it can be life-changing. It was for me. But for me, figuring out the truth about what happiness really is pretty much all started with learning what happiness is not. Usually the hard way, involving credit card debt and too much wine, but that's another story. So here's what happiness isn't. Despite what you may have heard, happiness is not a choice. You can't just kick back and say, I choose happiness, and then have it happen. But wouldn't that be great, though, in life, if we could just choose things and have them happen automatically? I can think of a couple things I'd start with on that. No, it's not a choice, but it does begin with a choice. And once you've made that choice, like any choice in life, it has to be backed up with action to make it a reality. You may have also heard that happiness is something you find. And you hear people all the time say things like, I'm so glad she's found happiness. And happy people, they don't find happiness like you'd find a penny on the ground. They make it happen with action. They consciously and deliberately create it. They're not lucky. They're just dedicated. So what is happiness exactly? Even the dictionary is a little confusing on this. You look at the definition for happiness, and it says, a state of well-being and contentment, a pleasurable and satisfying experience. And you're like, I kind of got that part, yeah, but what else? How do I get there? I'll give you the short version of the story of how I came to know the truth about what happiness actually is and how to get there. 13 years ago, I hit a wall in my life. And I didn't know much about myself then, but one thing I did know was that I had never been truly happy for any extended period. I'd had happy times, but I'd suffered with depression on and off. And what was worse to me was I just had this overall sense of mediocrity in my everyday life. I was barking up every wrong tree looking for happiness. There was the tree of shopping for too much stuff, the tree of trying to please everyone, the tree of junk food, the tree of overachievement and other people's approval. I still get caught up in that one every now and then, I admit. The tree of partying too much. Anybody familiar with any of those trees? Yeah. So one morning I woke up in a cold sweat. I was shaking. My heart was pounding, and this had never happened to me before. I was like, what is going on? My pillow was soaked. I sat up, and I knew in that moment my body was screaming at me what my mind had known for a while, and that's that I could not continue on the way that I had been, or I'd be facing some serious consequences. I had to find a way to do something different, and I also knew that I was going to have to do something drastic. So I quit my stressful corporate job, and I set out on what would turn out to be a decade-long mission to decode happiness. I studied everything I could get my hands on that related to happiness. I read books and scientific studies. I went to seminars, I weeded out a lot of BS, and I worked hard on changing my mindsets. And my level of happiness greatly increased, and my life improved. It was wonderful. But I knew there was still something deeper to be uncovered, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So then in 2008, something happened that was both amazingly wonderful and absolutely horrible at the same time. Out of nowhere, I became sick with a condition called adhesive capsulitis, which basically caused me to lose the use of my left shoulder, arm, and hand for over a year. It was really painful. All I could do was just lay on the couch and try and get through the day. But what I did do was decide to use that time as a gift to finally put my happiness at the top of my priority list and to finally find that missing link that I've been looking for. And so I fully dedicated myself each day for over a year to focusing very intently on happiness from the moment I woke up until well into the day. I eliminated some old negative draining habits and trees, and I worked really, really hard at it. And when my illness subsided after about 14 months, something huge had happened. Something inside me had changed at my core. I was a different person. I was happy. I had that overall state of well-being and contentment that the dictionary talks about. And it was coming to me naturally and organically. The way that I was seeing the world and experiencing my everyday life had changed. And I was like, what did I do to get here? I had to figure it out so I could share it with people. So I took a step back. And I carefully examined everything that I had done over that last couple of years to try and pinpoint exactly how and where this transformation took place. And in my digging, I came across a quote from the Greek philosopher Aristotle that gave me the answers and the clarity that I was looking for. Happiness is a state of activity. A state of activity. So this is not just something that we hope for or think about or try and find. It's something that we do, that we have to actively take part in creating every single day. It's a skill, a multifaceted skill that with practice and dedication, we can learn and become good at in the same way we would learn to play a musical instrument or learn a new language. And there's science behind this. There's this amazing thing called neuroplasticity, which in part is your brain's ability to rewire itself based on changes in behavior patterns. So basically, our brain is our best friend here. Do something long enough, and you'll retrain your brain to support you in the changes you want to make in your life. Just like I'd done when I was sick. So when we rethink happiness, and we begin to approach it as a skill that we can learn and become good at, that's when everything changes. So where exactly do we start when it comes to learning this skill of happiness? Well, it's different for everyone, but I'll share with you 3 things that really worked for me that I think are great places for anyone to start. So first is change your mornings. The way we're living our mornings is setting the stage for our entire day and life. So this is also a bite-sized place to start, too, that doesn't feel overwhelming. Just make those first couple of hours of the day positive and supportive. Do healthy things for your body and spirit. And breathe a little bit. Skip that snooze button. And just make them great. Use your mornings to create the foundation for the kind of life that you want to be living. Second, be always seeking. So in the same way a bee buzzes around looking for pollen from flowers, The happiest people resourcefully seek beauty, joy, adventure, wonder, and powerful meaning in all areas of life. They drink it in. Third, participate. So I received an email a while back from an old friend of mine that really wrenched my heart. And he shared with me that over the past 10 years, he had gained over 100 pounds. And not from fast food or too much sugar or any medical issues, but from not participating in life. Not participating. He felt like he'd lost all his passion. But what he didn't realize was that he already had the answer. We must participate in our own happiness and take responsibility for it. So I got him on the phone, and I shared with him quite a few of the things I'm sharing with you today. And he made some big changes. He remembered how when he was younger, he loved being active. So now he's taking Taekwondo and loving it. He's happier at work, taking better care of himself, and all of this from a change in perspective to being willing to more mindfully participate. So earlier I mentioned that happiness begins with a choice. Not a choice, but begins with a choice. Once we've made that choice, there are some important things that we need to keep in mind. We must stop looking for happiness and instead start actively creating it. Happiness is not something you find, it's something you do, and a skill that you can practice and become good at. And finally, happiness is your true nature. It really is. We're born with this skill. It just gets trained out of so many of us by the time we're in middle school. And we need to relearn. So, by the way, the story about the grass stains. My mom told me that story when we were in the hospital waiting room waiting for my brother to come out of surgery after a ski accident. And thankfully he was okay. But I really had time that day to think about how, as little kids, doing happiness is a top priority. And then somewhere along the way, it just falls down the list, or even off the list for some of us, like it did for me. So be willing to start on a new journey to happiness with a blank slate, the same way you'd approach learning to play a musical instrument. Learn what works for you. And bring those things into your life on a regular basis with passion and drive and determination. Go after those grass stains. Thank you.